Welcome everyone to this Cisco session on how to drive better business and SAP performance with AppDynamics. Shamayel Khan, Senior Sales Engineer at AppDynamics, will be our speaker for today. Please feel free to use the Q&A function to post any questions you have for us, and we will take the time to answer these at the end of the session. Shamayel, over to you to kick off the presentation.
Thank you, Sylvia. Hello, everyone. My name is Shamayel Khan, and I'm a Senior Sales Engineer in AppDynamics. So the topic today is going to be specific to how you can monitor your SAP application landscape and drive better performance and better business outcomes from it. So just some legal slide which has to be displayed as per our lawyers. And of course, you might know we have a good relationship at Atos. It's a strategic alliance which we have built, and it's very in-depth. It covers a lot of different functional areas, and that is what we're moving onwards with. Now, as far as today's agenda goes, the things I'm going to discuss with you today are, the first thing is, why would you use AppDynamics for monitoring your SAP instance? What is the reason that this makes sense? And onwards, we will discuss the value of AppDynamics, the feature functions and the values they deliver. You'll see a demo, a live demo, and then towards the end of the session, we'll go towards the Q&A. So any questions you might have, just feel free to type them in and I'll address them towards the end of the session. So the first part of today's topic, why use AppDynamics for monitoring your SAP landscape, application landscape? So currently the way traditional SAP monitoring has been done is through SAP's own solution called Solution Manager, or Solman for short. But it has some drawbacks which we saw as gaps within the SAP landscape, which you can cover with AppDynamics. And the first and foremost is that with Solution Manager, you only have visibility within your SAP environment. So rarely have I seen any SAP environment existing as a standalone environment. You always have integrations with, maybe there's a front end, maybe there's a web shop, there's backends, databases, something on your cloud, web services, etc. So it rarely exists on its own. So if you use Solution Manager, you kind of limit yourself to just one part of your whole IT application landscape. The other things which are there, the gaps which we saw with Solution Manager, were that you need to use manual baselines. You have static thresholds. You need to define certain values for your metrics above which the alerts are raised. And it's very reactive as well. So you need to wait for somebody to complain and then go and try to reproduce the issue and try to take traces of the issue to find out where the problem was. So that was the first gap that we saw when you monitor SAP applications with Solution Manager. Now, as I said, if you use AppDynamics, you get that complete visibility over your whole application landscape. It doesn't matter if part of it is sitting on the cloud, maybe you're using microservices, you have virtual machines, servers, SAP is one important part of it. It doesn't matter. AppDynamics gives you that complete visibility of your whole IT application landscape end to end with just one tool, with just one solution, with just one screen. You can see what's going on within your whole landscape. A couple of other gaps that we saw was that with the third-party solutions which you might get for SAP monitoring, you don't have the ability to instrument your ABAP code. So ABAP is the language in which SAP programs are written in. So the reason for that is there's no third-party application out there currently which has an agent which can, they don't have an ABAP specific SAP agent. Nobody has it except for AppDynamics. So nobody has that ability to tell you what is the execution time of your ABAP code, the SAP code, how much time it takes. Maybe there's like improvements which can be made in the code. There's nothing which can currently do that. The current way of monitoring SAP applications, as I said before, with Solman as well as with other solutions, it's very reactive and it's very manual. You have to run transaction codes. You have to find out what's going on. You have to try to reproduce the issues to see what is happening. It's kind of like trying to do a post-mortem after something has happened. So you're not proactive. You're not trying to solve problems before they actually become problems. Other things are you get unhelpful alert storms. So this is very common when you use something like Solman. You have these static thresholds I talked about. So if it's your application is supposed to be busier at certain points of time, it's maybe naturally busy. It's a payroll application, for example. It's calculating salaries. Maybe it's busier once or twice a month. So those times the application is supposed to be a bit slow. But if you have static thresholds, you will get unnecessary alerts, and which don't tell you much about how the application is behaving. So we mitigate that risk, and I'll tell you how we do it. Moreover, there's no business context. If you use Solman or the other third-party solutions out there, you lack this insight into the business part of the activity which is going on. You don't know how much revenue is in the transactions, what type of customers are being affected, maybe the locations, this kind of soft data that I call. So not exactly technical data, but the commercial data, which can make sense for prioritizing issues, for example. So you can address the most critical revenue affecting issues first. So these were the gaps, the three major gaps that we saw in the current way that SAP monitoring is done. And this is what we have tried to mitigate with AppDynamics. So let's see how we do that. So the value we deliver with AppDynamics is the visibility, first of all. Like I said, you have an end-to-end view of your whole application landscape, SAP plus non-SAP. It doesn't matter. So we're the only application performance monitoring vendor, a PM vendor out there with an SAP-specific ABAP agent. So we have that unique ability to look into your SAP systems and see what kind of code is being executed when some transactions are occurring in your system. The other benefits we bring are things like flow maps, so real-time bird's eye view of your IT landscape, your application landscape. And I'll show you that in the demo as well. So that is something which you cannot do with SAP's own Solman, with Solution Manager. You get dashboards. We can see health of different components of your SAP plus non-SAP areas of your IT landscape. And what that gives you is this enriched view of what is actually happening within your application landscape. I know within Solman you can have these dashboards, but again, they will be limited to just looking at SAP statistics. You can't mix them with anything else which might be affecting the performance of your applications. Troubleshooting wise, we have the unique ability to monitor the ABAP code and see how it's performing. To mitigate that risk with the static thresholds I talked about, we do something called dynamic baselines. So dynamic baselines are moving values of all the metrics which your application is generating, and we see how your application naturally behaves at certain points of time. So if it's busier on the weekends, maybe it's busier in the evenings on once or twice a month, like I mentioned for a payroll application. We learn that behavior. So AppDynamics knows that this particular transaction happening is supposed to be slow at this point of time because it's supposed to be busy. So we have these baseline values, and because of these values, we don't raise unnecessary alerts and alert storms. We capture transaction snapshots as well. So we see when the performance deviates from these baselines, we start taking in-depth pictures of your code, how it's behaving. You can set up all kinds of alert rules. We have integrations with ITSM systems. You can run remediation scripts. You can run, you can create incidents, and etc. The other thing is we're SAP certified, premium certified, so it's a good thing. I know nobody will install any transports on their SAP system if it's not certified, so you can be rest assured that we're certified. A couple of other things before I actually show you the demo. That you can configure our SAP agents from within SAP's GUI itself. So usually SAP people, the basis teams are used to the SAP GUI. You can use the same GUI graphical user interface to configure our agents. We can also do end user monitoring for your Fiori systems. If you use SAP Fiori, of course, SAP has a lot of end user places through which people can access SAP systems, Fiori being one of them. So if it's Fiori, we can do end user monitoring and we can see what kind of, how much time the page takes to load, what kind of pictures are there, etc. We have transaction analytics as well, which what that means is you can create what we call these data collectors. So the data collectors are specific custom values you can extract from your application. So it could be the revenue in a particular transaction, the, like I said before, location, it could be user type. Maybe you have platinum users or gold level users, etc. So these kind of business metrics, and you can create these data collectors and you can bring in these values even when we're not taking a snapshot. So you have these as a metric and you can draw dashboards and see maybe revenue is going down at a certain point of time and raise alerts based on those business values. Apart from that, if you take in our additional capabilities, you get tons of dashboards, tons of metrics regarding HANA, SAP S4 HANA. You can see the database metrics, the server metrics for HANA. You can see iDocs, that's the information docs within SAP used to communicate between SAP systems. We can monitor those. The screenshot you see is a screenshot from the SAP GUI itself, but we can also show these within AppDynamics and enrich it more with your non-SAP system data. So you get this information from SAP, and then you can combine it with information from your other transactions, which might be hitting your SAP system to see where exactly the problem might lie. Is it in your SAP or non-SAP system? Same with background job monitoring. We can see and measure what the bad jobs are doing behind the scenes, the background jobs. We can diagnose issues with those as well. So there's a lot of detailed and granular metrics and data which you can catch and display from your SAP system once you start using AppDynamics. So what I'm now going to show you is a short demo of how we typically see an application landscape within AppDynamics and how we can use it to troubleshoot an issue. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. And hopefully you can see something on the screen. Sylvia, please let me know if something is not working. So what you see is what we call a flow map, like I mentioned before, a flow map of your application. I'm accessing through the browser our controller, the AppDynamics controller, and the controller is the central point where all these agents which you have deployed in your application landscape are reporting to. So as you can see, there's like Java parts of your application, there's Node.js, and there's this SAP area. There's an SAP portal, there's a NetWeaver gateway, an ERP system, and you're seeing all of these together in one view. So the flow map is fully automated. It's fully there's no manual intervention needed to build this picture. It's fully automatic, and the value of this is that you can actually see your application, how it's performing in real time. You can see the transactions. You can go back in time if you wish to, up to 1 year. You can even have custom windows of time if you're troubleshooting, like 5 minutes. So you can set a time frame of 5 minutes and see how your application was behaving. Usually this information is in people's heads or in a Microsoft Visio diagram on somebody's computer or in somebody's hard drive. And again, the other thing is, like, if you ask database people, they have a different picture of the application landscape. So this flow map kind of throws all that risk away, wipes it clean, and shows you a gold standard view of how your application landscape looks like. And it doesn't matter if it's an SAP system, if it's a non-SAP systems, how they're communicating with each other. You can see all of that in one picture. Now, as I mentioned before, like we measure transactions within AppDynamics. So that's how we kind of rise above the need to be dependent on any particular system. What we do is we catch a transaction where it starts and we follow it through the system. And we call these business transactions. So the business transactions are your points of interaction with your customers. Maybe your customers are touching something on your application, checking out, ordering something, whatever. And these are your units of work of your application. The application is doing some work, and each business transaction is that one particular unit of work. The business transactions are, again, fully automated. They're like, what I mean is like they're fully automatically discovered by AppDynamics. So you don't need to necessarily intervene and build something from scratch by hand. But you can change the configurations, how these transactions are discovered to check, for example, to change the way it's discovered if you can. So you have that ability to do that. These transactions, we measure 100% of the transactions 100% of the time. So when we're doing that, we're getting all these rich metrics from every single transaction happening in your application landscape. We're building these baselines, and then we're comparing these transactions with the baseline values. So as soon as it starts to deviate from those baseline values, we start then taking snapshots, and that's where we do our troubleshooting part, a root cause analysis. So before I actually do that, I can go to show you a dashboard, and then we'll dive into a troubleshooting session. So I'm opening a dashboard of our SAP system. And as you can see, there's a lot of data. You can see a user journey here, like how many portal requests are coming in. These are all different transaction steps leading towards the culmination in the sales order, basically when it's placed, the sales order, and you make some money. And to do this kind of a dashboard in current systems available, like Solman, for example, Solution Manager, it would take you a lot of time because you would have to execute so many different transactions, SAP transactions, just to get the values of the IDOCS errors, the outbound or inbound IDOCS errors separately. And you would have to run another transaction to get RFC errors. You would have to do another one for ERP alerts. So what this dashboard is doing is automating all that transaction execution on your SAP system and then getting the data and showing it to you here. And what this also gives you is the ability to interact directly through the dashboard. So for example, you see these red circles here. So within the last 1 hour, let me make it 2 hours just to give it a big window of time. You see there's 2 reds here. So what I want to do is I want to see why it's a red. I want to troubleshoot it, do a root cause analysis. So I can just click on that picture in the dashboard and go into what my actual transaction itself. So just clicking on that dashboard brings me to the flow map of that one particular business transaction where it's behaving not so well. It's deviating from the baseline. That's why there's a red color next to it. And you see there's this flow map of this particular business transaction. You see it originates at the SAP portal and then it hits our ERP system. It's a simple example, of course. And on the right side, you see a transaction scorecard. So what this is doing is within the last 2 hours, it's telling me that 66% of the transactions which occurred were normal. So they were within the baseline metric values, the expected metrics, which we expected from looking at the historical baselines of this transaction. But then there's 33% which are very slow. So those are the ones that you need to proactively look at and troubleshoot and fix before your customers start complaining. And that's what AppDynamics gives you, that ability to do that. And how you would do that is you would go into these snapshots, transaction snapshots I talked about. When a transaction starts becoming slow, very slow, AppDynamics starts taking these snapshots. And in a snapshot, you get a much granular level of detail as to what your systems were doing when that slowness was occurring. So this particular snapshot was taken by AppDynamics, and you can see it took 4.4 seconds to execute. So it's relatively slow compared with the historical baselines. There are some potential issues highlighted, but I want to see what's happening within the code. So what I do is I start from where it says start. I can drill down, and the drill down shows me the Java code which was executed at that particular time when this transaction was executed. So there's this class name, there's a method name, and there's even a line number. And on the right side, you can see the execution time of that particular line number. And you also see a visual representation of how much time it took out of the total execution time. So this is taking 100% of the time on the Java tier. So this is what I want to look at. And if I go down a bit deeper into it, it tells me that when this method was executed, that line number 301, it made an exit call to the, and it was an RFC call to the SAP system. And it seems that all the slowness is coming from the SAP system. So the Java system made the call, but the slowness was not in the Java system. The slowness seems to be downstream in the SAP system. So I want to look at what the SAP system was doing now, and I can just do that with one single click. I can see all the classes which were executed on the SAP ERP system at that particular time when this transaction executed. So I can see within these square brackets the name of the class, the ABAP class. So this is the ABAP code which you're looking at, and the ABAP on the class, the line number on the right side after the colon, line number 118. And on the right side, you can see the time it took again to consume, to execute. And as you can see, there's these two particular, actually it's the same class. If you look at it, it's the same class. There's a VBAC, and then there's a ordering of the records. It's the same class. The line number is different, and it's taking a lot of time. So this is what AppDynamics gives you, that ability to just, with a couple of clicks, I think I clicked like 2 or 3 times on the snapshot, I saw the call graph, I dove in, and I went right down into the SAP code itself. So you do this root cause analysis within a couple of minutes rather than trying to reproduce the error, trying to run your traces, ST05, SM21 transaction codes in SAP systems. It's time consuming and it costs money. With this, it's all automated. We're doing it automatically for you and showing you the results. And what you would do now is you would just click this clipboard button, the copy button. It copies the link to this particular page to your clipboard. You can send it to the developers, let them come here and look at this and then go to their code and fix it. So that's how you would do a particular troubleshooting session on an SAP or a mixed system. Like this was a mixed system, by using AppDynamics. There's a ton of other functions. We have artificial intelligence built in, which can actually proactively raise anomalies when metrics start deviating from baselines. We have user experience journeys, which can show you where your users are going within your web-based applications, etc. But obviously, we don't have so much time. You're most welcome to come to our booth and have a look there. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'll go back to the presentation that I had to continue there. I hope you can see the presentation again. All right, so just before I stop to take your questions, a couple of success stories I wanted to point out. So what did we achieve with some of our best customers who deployed our SAP monitoring solution on their SAP systems? So, for example, we have a big company, like a big global retailer, and what they did was they used to have a lot of issues, and they would spend like hours trying to resolve that issue. And what we did for them was we reduced that whole root cause analysis time and the mean time to resolution, the MTTR, by a huge margin, because they were spending this time on trying to reproduce the issues, like I mentioned. But with our snapshotting capability and the call graphs, they can now actually very quickly see where the problem is. Is it in your SAP system? Is it in your front end, back end? Maybe the database is slow, etc. You can very quickly point out who to blame, basically, for the issues. Then we have a big pharmaceutical customer. It's a US company. It's a Fortune 50 company. It's huge. They used to have very limited visibility into their SAP systems, and they would spend a lot of time just trying to maintain these alert storms that I talked about, the thresholds. If you set them too high, you miss the alerts. If you set them too low, you get too many alerts. So with our baselining capability, we solved that problem for them, and they're pretty happy now. So yeah. All right. And a couple of other customers that we have. Not all of them, of course. Not everybody's a reference customer. These are just the companies which were happy that we put their logo up on a screen. Big names out there. And just to summarize before I can take your questions, so as you saw, the SAP monitoring potential for AppDynamics is huge. And it's a win-win situation for everyone, really. You get a lot of value from AppDynamics because you're viewing your whole application landscape rather than just one part of it. And when you are viewing the whole landscape, it's much easier and quicker for you to pinpoint where the issues are by using AppDynamics. We have the industry first ABAP agent. So you saw we can look into your ABAP code, the SAP code itself automatically. There's no manual input needed. You can see in this transaction snapshots how the code is behaving, where the slowness is, and where your developers need to concentrate. We support different public cloud providers. You might have your installations on hybrid clouds, private clouds, wherever, it doesn't matter, since we follow a tag and trace approach on your transactions. And we complement Solution Manager. So please don't feel we're a replacement for Solman, because Solman does a lot of other things other than monitoring. So they do like incident management and a lot of other things which we don't do. But on the monitoring part that Solman does, we do a much better job. So that particular part of Solman, the monitoring part, we can definitely do it better, and we complement it. So at this point, I'm going to pause and look if there are any questions.
Cool. Thank you very much, Shamayel. We are running out of time for this session, so we're going to be able to answer only a few questions. If anyone has any more, feel free to reach out to our engineers on the Cisco AppDynamics booth. They are available for you to have a chat one-to-one. So quickly, Shamayel, one of the questions is this available on-premise only?
No, actually we support on-premises as well as a cloud offering. So we are available on both cloud as well as on-premises. So we have, if you take our cloud offering, it's a SaaS-based solution. Then you get a URL and you can log into our controller with a username and password and use it. But if you want it on-premises, you can do that as well. So we support both. It's not only on-premises, no.
Cool. And how fast can we see a positive impact?
Oh, it's really quick in the way that once you have it all set up, once you have deployed the agents through these 4 transports we will give you, you will install them in your SAP systems, the central instance of your SAP systems. It takes a few minutes to draw the flow map and a few minutes to see these business transactions. And the longer you keep it running, the better those baselines become, because the system is learning, the machine learning is learning at that point of time. But the results you can see immediately. You can look at the snapshots, you can take manual snapshots, you can look at the code. So it's once it's up and running, it's immediate.
Cool. I think we're running out of time. As I said, if anyone has any other questions, reach out to our engineers on the Cisco AppDynamics booth, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Right. Thank you very much.